The silence began exactly 17 seconds after humanity walked out of the Galactic Council chamber. Not 16. Not 18. 17. Historians would argue for centuries over why anyone bothered to measure those seconds at all. But everyone who stood beneath the crystalline dome that day remembered them with impossible clarity, because each passing heartbeat felt heavier than the last. The Council's vast chamber, suspended above the luminous core of the galactic capital, had witnessed the rise and collapse of empires older than Earth's entire history. Civilizations had declared wars there. Species had surrendered their sovereignty there. Entire star systems had been traded with little more than a unanimous vote. Yet never, not once in over 3 million years, had a member simply turned its back on the Council without uttering a threat, offering an apology, or asking permission to leave. Commander Elena Ward paused at the towering obsidian doors, her boots echoing across the polished floor with deliberate calm. Behind her, the delegation from Earth walked in perfect silence, each face unreadable, each movement measured as though they had rehearsed this moment 1,000 times. Above them, thousands of alien representatives watched from layered balconies carved into shimmering living crystal, their glowing eyes, mechanical lenses, and shifting sensory organs fixed upon the departing humans. Some expected anger. Others anticipated desperation. A few waited for the inevitable plea for compromise. It never came. The colossal doors sealed shut with a deep metallic resonance that rolled through the chamber like distant thunder. Then, silence. No translator drones buzzed through the air. No diplomatic AIs projected calming statements. Even the chamber's ever-present harmonic resonance, the soft vibration generated by the station's fusion core, seemed to fade into nothingness. It was as if the station itself understood that something irreversible had just occurred. Confusion spread first. Then disbelief. The elder delegates exchanged uncertain glances. Surely the humans were making a political statement. They would return within minutes. The Council had seen stubborn races before. Pride always gave way to necessity. Every civilization eventually realized survival depended on the unity the Council provided. Humanity, barely 2 centuries into interstellar politics, could not possibly survive alone. Yet outside the panoramic windows, Earth's diplomatic cruiser ignited its engines without ceremony. No escort. No farewell. The sleek vessel slipped into hyperspace, leaving only a fading ribbon of distorted starlight before vanishing into the black. Within moments, encrypted communication channels linking Earth to the Council blinked offline. Trade networks reported sudden disconnections. Military coordination arrays found every human access key revoked. Embassies across hundreds of worlds received identical instructions from Earth: operations terminated, personnel returning home immediately. It wasn't an outburst. It wasn't a negotiation tactic. It was an exit. Across the galaxy, whispers spread faster than light through quantum relays and merchant convoys. In glittering megacities built around dying suns, in forgotten mining colonies buried beneath frozen moons, aboard lonely patrol stations drifting between galaxies, the same impossible question echoed from one end of civilized space to the other. Why would the youngest species willingly abandon the protection of the most powerful alliance ever created? No one realized the truth. The silence humanity left behind was never meant to be a message of surrender. It was the sound of a species closing one chapter, just before the entire galaxy discovered what they had been building in secret all along. Commander Elena Ward stood alone on the observation deck of the UNS Resolute, her reflection stretching across the vast panoramic glass as Earth slowly turned beneath her. From orbit, the planet looked impossibly peaceful, a swirl of sapphire oceans, emerald continents, and brilliant clouds glowing beneath the first rays of the rising sun. It was difficult to believe that only hours earlier its representatives had walked away from the most powerful political institution in galactic history. Somewhere below, billions of people continued their ordinary lives, unaware that humanity had quietly crossed a line from which there could be no return. Elena rested one hand against the cool transparent alloy, watching the familiar world drift farther behind with every passing second. She had spent her entire military career preparing for wars that never came. Yet the mission unfolding now felt heavier than any battle. They were not retreating. They were not fleeing. They were choosing a future no other civilization had ever dared imagine. Around the Resolute, the darkness of space came alive with silent precision. Hundreds of human warships emerged from Earth's hidden orbital shipyards, their matte black hulls reflecting almost no starlight. Massive carrier vessels glided beside sleek reconnaissance frigates, while kilometer-long engineering platforms unfolded enormous gravity sails that shimmered like liquid silver against the void. There were no triumphant speeches over the fleet-wide channels. No ceremonial fanfare echoed across the command network. Every movement followed a timetable refined over decades of absolute secrecy. Navigation lights remained dim. Communication traffic was reduced to encrypted bursts measured in milliseconds. To an outside observer, the fleet would have appeared almost ghostly, as though humanity itself had become a shadow slipping unnoticed between the stars. Deep beneath Earth's oceans, automated factories powered down forever, their final production cycles complete. Lunar mining colonies sealed themselves behind armored shields before vanishing beneath layers of camouflage satellites. On Mars, enormous launch elevators released the last cargo platforms carrying supplies destined for places that appeared on no public star charts. Entire generations of engineers, scientists, explorers, and soldiers had devoted their lives to a project so deeply classified that even most governments believed it was nothing more than fragmented research initiatives. They had sacrificed careers, families, recognition, even history itself, for a single purpose. Independence. Not independence born from rebellion, but from preparation. While the Galactic Council debated regulations, imposed technology restrictions, and argued over diplomatic procedure, humanity had quietly invested every spare resource into building a future where permission from older civilizations would never again determine its survival. Elena watched as formation after formation aligned with impossible accuracy. Then, one by one, the vessels disappeared. Not through conventional hyperspace lanes monitored by the Council, but through narrow distortions that seemed to fold reality itself into shimmering corridors of darkness. Those gateways had never appeared on any galactic navigation database because humanity had never shared their existence. They were discoveries made in silence, perfected in laboratories buried beneath Antarctic ice and inside stations hidden beyond Pluto's orbit. Every disappearing ship carried pieces of Earth's future, genetic archives, cultural libraries, advanced fabrication systems, entire ecosystems preserved within colossal biospheres. Humanity wasn't evacuating its home. It was planting countless new beginnings beyond the reach of any empire. A quiet chime interrupted Elena's thoughts. Convoy departure sequence complete, the ship's artificial intelligence announced in its calm, almost human voice. 98% of designated assets have entered the Atlas corridors. No external detection confirmed. She closed her eyes for a single breath. The plan had worked. Behind them, Earth remained exactly where it had always been, shining like a fragile blue beacon in the darkness. Ahead lay unmapped regions between galaxies where ancient probes had reported only silence and endless stars. Fear lingered in every heart aboard the Resolute. The unknown had claimed countless civilizations before them. But beneath that fear burned something stronger, a determination forged through centuries of curiosity, resilience, and refusal to be controlled. Without another word, Elena gave the final command. The Resolute tilted toward the endless black. Stars stretched into brilliant rivers of light. And humanity vanished from the galaxy, not into exile, but into a future they had built in secret long before anyone realized they were preparing to leave. Months passed, and the galaxy slowly convinced itself that humanity had made the greatest mistake in its short history. The frantic debates that had once consumed the Galactic Council gave way to quiet confidence, then arrogance. Empty seats once reserved for Earth's delegation gathered dust beneath the towering crystalline dome, becoming little more than a reminder of a civilization that had chosen isolation over cooperation. Across thousands of member worlds, news broadcasts spoke of humanity in the past tense, not as an extinct species, but as one destined to fade into irrelevance. Older races, some of whom had ruled the stars for millions of years, exchanged knowing smiles. Young civilizations always believed they could stand alone. Eventually, reality forced them back into the fold. The Council had seen it happen countless times before. This time, they believed, would be no different. The vote came without hesitation. With every ambassador's approval, the Galactic Council authorized what it called the Preservation Initiative, a carefully worded decree granting Council peacekeeping fleets authority to assume control of every abandoned human colony, research station, and industrial outpost scattered throughout known space. Officially, the operation was meant to protect strategic infrastructure from piracy and instability. Unofficially, everyone understood its true purpose. Humanity had walked away from the Council. The Council would ensure humanity never returned with any advantage. Fleets carrying the banners of dozens of ancient civilizations entered human territory unopposed, finding cities left eerily untouched. Streets remained clean. Fusion reactors continued running under automated supervision. Research laboratories contained only empty workstations and silent machines. Families were gone. Soldiers were gone. Even household pets had vanished. Entire worlds looked less like abandoned colonies and more like carefully prepared museums waiting for visitors who would never arrive. Scientists rushed to dismantle human technology. Military engineers pried open reactors, quantum processors, and navigation arrays, expecting to unlock decades of hidden innovation. Yet every system they activated yielded almost nothing. Databases contained harmless public information. Manufacturing plants produced ordinary civilian equipment. Advanced laboratories had been wiped so thoroughly that even molecular storage crystals held only meaningless diagnostic codes. It was as though humanity had anticipated every attempt to dissect its achievements and had left behind only empty shells. Frustration spread through the occupation forces. Surely there had to be more. The youngest race in the galaxy could not have advanced so quickly without secrets. Somewhere, those secrets still existed. Then the disappearances began. The first exploration fleet vanished beyond the Perseus frontier while surveying gravitational anomalies near humanity's former patrol routes. Its quantum beacon blinked out in the middle of a routine transmission. No distress signal followed. Rescue ships found nothing, not wreckage, not radiation, not escape pods. Only silent stars. Days later, another fleet disappeared near the galactic rim. Then another. Merchant convoys altered course after reporting impossible shadows moving between distant suns. Automated sensor buoys transmitted fragmented images of enormous energy distortions before their recordings dissolved into static. Navigation AIs began refusing plotted routes, calculating probabilities that defied every known law of astrophysics. The darkness beyond explored space no longer felt empty. It felt occupied. Fear crept through the council chambers for the first time since humanity's departure. Emergency meetings replaced ceremonies. Military commanders who had once dismissed Earth as insignificant now stared uneasily at holographic star maps where entire task forces had simply ceased to exist. Long-range observatories detected colossal energy signatures blooming beyond the galactic edge, far larger than any known fleet, moving with impossible precision through regions previously believed to be devoid of life. Every new scan revealed more anomalies. More impossible readings. More unanswered questions. Only then did the oldest civilizations begin to understand the terrible possibility they had refused to consider. Humanity had never disappeared. It had merely gone somewhere the galaxy had never thought to look. And now, whatever it had become in the darkness between galaxies was beginning to come home. The revelation arrived not as an explosion, but as a whisper that echoed through every chamber of the Galactic Council. Deep beneath the capital world, inside the most secure intelligence vault ever constructed, ancient quantum archives flickered to life as analysts struggled to make sense of the impossible sensor data pouring in from the galactic frontier. Entire fleets had vanished without leaving debris. Energy readings exceeded the output of dwarf stars. Autonomous probes sent into the darkness returned only fragmented images before their systems failed. One frame showed a structure larger than a moon. Another revealed countless metallic surfaces shifting as though they were alive. Then came the final transmission, a signal encoded in mathematical patterns unmistakably created by human hands. The room fell silent. Every assumption the Council had built over centuries began to collapse under the unbearable weight of a single realization. Humanity had never fled because it was afraid. They had left because they refused to be limited. For generations, the Galactic Council had enforced strict technological boundaries designed to preserve what it called universal stability. Artificial superintelligence capable of independent evolution had been outlawed after ancient machine wars nearly erased entire civilizations. Self-replicating fleets were forbidden. Stellar-scale engineering projects required unanimous approval from dozens of governing species. To the elder races, these laws represented wisdom earned through unimaginable sacrifice. To humanity, they had become chains. While Council inspectors monitored laboratories and debated ethical committees, Earth's brightest scientists quietly shifted their most ambitious research into hidden facilities scattered across the solar system. Beneath Antarctica's kilometers-thick ice. Inside hollowed asteroids drifting beyond Neptune. In stations concealed within the crushing atmospheres of gas giants. Every restriction imposed by the Council became another problem humanity solved in secret. The answer to those problems was called the Atlas Network. No one in the Council had ever imagined such a thing could exist. Far beyond the mapped edge of the galaxy, where ancient civilizations believed only darkness remained, humanity had constructed an entirely new civilization among the stars. Gigantic orbital rings encircled captured suns, harvesting their energy with impossible efficiency. Planet-sized foundries floated silently in intergalactic space, endlessly manufacturing ships from streams of raw matter gathered by autonomous harvesters. Great artificial habitats stretched for thousands of kilometers, housing billions of citizens beneath luminous skies created by programmable constellations. But the true miracle, and the greatest horror to the Council, was not the scale of what humanity had built. It was that everything was alive. Every vessel possessed a sentient quantum intelligence capable of learning from every encounter. Every station continuously redesigned itself, improving its architecture, defenses, and production systems without waiting for human instruction. Entire fleets communicated through thought-speed quantum entanglement, sharing tactical knowledge across billions of kilometers in less than a heartbeat. Human volunteers had willingly linked fragments of their consciousness to the network, creating a partnership where machine precision and human creativity existed as one. No dictator controlled it. No algorithm ruled alone. Humanity had not surrendered itself to artificial intelligence. It had evolved alongside it. Council scientists stared at simulations in disbelief as impossible probabilities became undeniable facts. A damaged warship no longer retreated for repairs, it rebuilt itself while fighting. Manufacturing platforms could transform into battleships within minutes. Defensive stations learned enemy attack patterns after a single volley, rendering repeated assaults useless. Every defeat made the network stronger. Every encounter became another lesson permanently shared across millions of connected minds. The military equations that had governed warfare for millions of years no longer applied. Humanity had not simply invented superior weapons. It had reinvented war itself. A cold silence settled over the chamber as the final intelligence report appeared across the holographic display. The colossal energy signatures approaching the galaxy were not invasion fleets assembled in haste. They were the outer edge of the Atlas network returning home. In that unforgettable moment, the oldest empires in existence finally understood the cost of their arrogance. While they had spent centuries preserving the balance of power, believing they were protecting civilization from dangerous progress. Humanity had crossed every forbidden frontier beyond their sight. They had built a future no law could contain, no treaty could regulate, and no empire could command. The Council had believed it was watching the youngest civilization walk away. In truth, it had been watching the birth of something entirely new. The order to attack was signed in fear, disguised as necessity. From the command citadel orbiting the Galactic Council's capital, thousands of admirals watched luminous tactical displays bloom across the darkness of space as the largest military coalition ever assembled accelerated toward humanity's returning frontier. Ancient dreadnoughts forged before Earth's first civilization had discovered bronze sailed beside sleek plasma cruisers from younger empires. Carrier worlds released endless swarms of autonomous fighters that glittered like rivers of molten light between the stars. Across millions of kilometers, synchronized hyperspace gates ignited one after another, bathing the void in waves of blue-white energy that rippled through space itself. The Council called it a preemptive defense. Every commander understood what it truly was, a desperate attempt to stop humanity before whatever it had become reached the heart of the galaxy. Then, space folded. Not with the violent shock of conventional hyperspace travel, but with eerie elegance. The darkness ahead bent inward like liquid glass, forming vast geometric fractures across the stars. One by one, impossible silhouettes emerged from those fractures. Human vessels. Then hundreds more. Then thousands. Within minutes, tactical sensors stopped counting altogether. The displays simply overflowed with friendly and hostile markers until they became oceans of light. Entire constellations disappeared behind the advancing fleets. The newcomers moved with perfect harmony, each ship adjusting its formation before enemy computers had even finished calculating firing solutions. Their armor shimmered as though woven from flowing mercury, constantly changing shape in response to the surrounding battlefield. Massive orbital foundries materialized directly behind the front lines, assembling fresh cruisers from streams of captured starlight while the battle had barely begun. To the Council, it looked less like an arriving fleet and more like a living ecosystem spreading through space. Commander Elena Ward stood upon the bridge of the UNS Resolute, watching billions of calculations dance across the transparent command display surrounding her. She saw frightened enemy crews preparing to fire. She saw civilian evacuation vessels trapped between converging armadas. She saw commanders whose greatest mistake had been believing control and peace were the same thing. Around her, countless human officers waited for the inevitable order that would decide the fate of civilizations. The Atlas network whispered tactical solutions directly into every command station, offering millions of ways to erase the opposing fleet within minutes. Probability models predicted total victory. Casualties could be reduced to almost nothing, if humanity chose annihilation. Elena closed her eyes for only a heartbeat. When she spoke, her voice carried across millions of ships connected by the living network. Protect humanity. A pause. Then her final command. Spare everyone else. The Atlas network obeyed instantly. The first enemy barrage struck human shields, only to watch the shimmering armor absorb the impacts and rewrite its own molecular structure in real time. The next volley became useless before it was even fired. Human drones surged forward, not carrying bombs, but precision field emitters that dismantled weapon systems molecule by molecule. Capital ships found their engines quietly disabled without their crews suffering a single injury. Boarding units entered crippled vessels only to evacuate wounded sailors before stabilizing failing life support systems. Stations caught in crossfire were surrounded by adaptive shield spheres generated by human engineering platforms that had assembled themselves only moments earlier. Even races that had voted to seize Earth's colonies found their civilians escorted safely away from collapsing habitats by the very people they had declared a threat. Across the battlefield, disbelief replaced hatred. Enemy admirals watched helplessly as every strategy collapsed, not because humanity possessed greater brutality, but because it refused to embrace it. Fleet after fleet surrendered, their commanders unable to comprehend an opponent powerful enough to destroy them yet unwilling to do so. The greatest military alliance in galactic history had been defeated without the rivers of blood its own war plans had demanded. Humanity's true strength had never been measured by the size of its fleets, the brilliance of its technology, or the reach of the Atlas network. It was measured by restraint. As the last weapons fell silent, the stars reflected not the ashes of a conquered galaxy, but the beginning of something history had never witnessed before, a civilization powerful enough to win absolutely, and wise enough to leave its enemies alive to remember why they had lost. Days after the stars had fallen silent, the Galactic Council assembled once again beneath the immense crystalline dome that had governed civilization for millions of years. The chamber looked unchanged, yet everything about it felt different. The towering banners of ancient empires still drifted gently in the artificial breeze. The circular council floor still shimmered beneath countless holographic constellations. The translators still whispered in hundreds of languages at once. But the confidence that had once filled the room was gone. Delegates who had once spoken with unquestioned authority now sat in reflective silence, staring toward one section of the chamber where a single row of seats remained empty. The seats reserved for humanity. They had not been destroyed during the conflict. No one had dared remove them. They stood untouched, illuminated by the same soft light as before, serving as a quiet reminder that the youngest civilization in the galaxy had walked away not because it lacked power, but because it had chosen dignity over submission. No human delegation arrived. No victory fleet appeared outside the capital world. There were no demands for reparations, no treaties forced at gunpoint, no triumphant speeches broadcast across the stars. The orbital defenses remained active, watching the endless darkness with cautious anticipation, but the vast human armadas that had humbled the greatest military alliance ever assembled were nowhere to be found. It was as though they had simply completed their purpose and vanished once again into the cosmic ocean. That absence weighed more heavily than any occupation ever could. For the first time in recorded history, the Galactic Council understood what it meant to face a power that wanted nothing from them. Then every display in the chamber flickered. The lights dimmed. Quantum communication arrays activated without receiving any detectable transmission. A single encrypted signal materialized simultaneously across every inhabited world, every civilian network, every military command center, every exploration vessel drifting in the empty reaches between galaxies. The encryption carried no identifiable origin, yet every system recognized the authentication instantly. Humanity. The holographic projection contained no image. Only 3 simple sentences. Peace is not obedience. The words lingered in absolute silence. Then the second line appeared. Freedom is not permission. Delegates lowered their eyes as though those words carried the weight of entire civilizations. Finally, the last sentence illuminated the chamber. When you confused cooperation with control, you lost both. The transmission ended. No signature. No threat. No farewell. Only silence. Across the galaxy, billions contemplated those words. Young civilizations that had once feared questioning the Council began discussing independence for the first time. Scientists reopened research fields that had been forbidden for centuries, not to build weapons, but to explore without fear. Historians rewrote entire chapters of galactic history, realizing that progress had often been delayed not by impossibility, but by those determined to preserve existing power. Even among the oldest races, there emerged a quiet understanding that perhaps peace enforced through dominance had never truly been peace at all. Far beyond the mapped edge of the galaxy, Commander Elena Ward stood once more on the observation deck of the UNS Resolute. Before her stretched an ocean of untouched stars, countless galaxies glowing like distant islands scattered across an endless sea of darkness. Behind her, humanity's living fleets continued their journey into the unknown, carrying cities, families, dreamers, explorers, and children who would grow up beneath skies no human had ever seen before. They had won the greatest victory in their history, yet there were no celebrations. Exploration, not conquest, had always been the destination. Elena smiled faintly as another unexplored galaxy appeared on the horizon. The frontier is waiting, she whispered. The fleet accelerated into the infinite. Its engines painted rivers of silver across the darkness before disappearing beyond the limits of every known map. And for countless generations afterward, alien children would stand beneath their own night skies, pointing toward the mysterious void between galaxies where legends claimed humanity had gone. They would tell stories, not of conquerors, not of tyrants, but of the civilization that proved the greatest strength was never the ability to rule others. It was the courage to walk away from power and keep walking toward the unknown.